Welcome to the SIWIKE podcast, the only podcast that shares the stuff you didn't know you needed to know about jobs, careers, and life. The SIWIKE podcast, the stuff I wish I knew earlier.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the SIWIKE Stuff I Wish I Knew Earlier, the podcast. We're joined again by Marisa Duncan, who's going to share some of her perspectives. And the topic that we thought we'd get into today is imposter syndrome. So this is one that we connected a bit, and we'll kind of share our experiences, but probably get into a bit of the definitions first. So I found this one on Wikipedia, obviously because it's so trusted, but you can find your own. But it's basically a psychological pattern in which an individual doubts their skills, talents, and accomplishments, and has a persistent internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud, right? And apparently there are some subtypes where you could be kind of the perfectionist imposter syndrome, where you kind of feel that everything has to be perfect, and as a result, sometimes you procrastinate and stuff doesn't get done, and it always has to be better. Sometimes you're the expert, and an expert is one where you need to know more. You need to be the smartest one in the room, and you need to study and get better, have more experience, whatever it is. And there's a lot of overlap within these ones. The third one is being a natural genius. So if it's pure talent, there's no skill involved, it's pure talent. The fourth one is Superman, Superwoman, and basically you kind of do anything and everything, right? So you're the student who's the president of the club, has a 4.0 average, is also part of the football team, and you are volunteering at the seniors home, and basically kind of do anything and everything. And the soloist is the person who basically has to do everything on their own. They don't ask for help, nor do they want help, because if you are good at something, you do it on your own. So, and I align with all of these to some degree. But I'd love to hear a little bit about your experiences with imposter syndrome, and hopefully you start normalizing a little bit, because a lot of folks don't realize how common and pervasive it is, and it's almost something that everyone encounters in some shape or form. So what was it like, and where did you experience it in your life, Marisa?
Yeah, I feel extremely called out by all of those definitions. I was like, oh yeah, that's me. Yep. So it's definitely good to hear that this is like a normal thing that a lot of people experience, and there are all these different types. I only recently learned about the different types, and when you acknowledge that these exist, you can start to find examples of them in your own life. So I would say I have struggled with imposter syndrome. I sometimes do, I sometimes don't. It's I would say it's almost chronic. Like sometimes it flares up, sometimes it's quieter. But when
would you say is the first instance?
I was going to say the first experience of it was definitely my second year of engineering. So I came from like pretty rigorous high school. I did IB program, so I felt pretty comfortable, at least with the academics, in my first year of my engineering degree. But it was only when second year rolled around that there were some technical courses that I just did not get. And it was the first time in my life where I just didn't get something. Even if I like worked at it, I just didn't get it. And I was questioning, I was like, so is this because I'm not smart enough? Is this because I'm not working hard enough? But I thought I was doing the work, I was studying, and I just wasn't. Like, I remember getting back a midterm in electromagnetism, and I had failed it, and I didn't even fit. It wasn't even a close fail. It was just a straight out fail. And I was like, I actually studied for this. Why did I not at least pass? And that was the first moment I was like, maybe I'm not supposed to be here. Maybe they let me in by accident. Maybe it was just because of my extracurriculars, and I'm not actually supposed to be here. And so I think, that was a big turning point for me. At that point, I started to doubt whether it was even worth putting in the effort if I wasn't going to get a result. And so I guess that's kind of the perfectionist tendency. I'm just like, I mean, if I can't do it well and perfectly, then there's no point at all. And so I guess I started slacking. I started procrastinating hardcore on all of studying for the courses that I was doing poorly in. And obviously, if you don't put any effort into the courses that you're doing poorly in, you won't pass those courses. So that was the point when, that was the low point, I guess, of my engineering degree, where I, failed a few courses in second year, almost failed the term, and really wanted to self-sabotage myself out of there because I was not having a good time and I didn't think I was supposed to be there.
And my experience is similar, but a bit different in the sense that mine was in really in first year. I was more aligned with that kind of natural genius part where in elementary school and in high school, I was smart. I was identified as a gifted student. I was one of those special kids that went to special class. And as a result, I was a little bit full of myself. And if you're gifted, you don't have to study, right? You just know everything, right? So I did that for all of high school, and you can get away with it grade 9, grade 10, grade 11, maybe, and grade 12. And I was there when they had OACs, grade 13. That's kind of university level stuff, and you actually have to open up the book. You actually have to kind of pay attention in class to learn that. So I didn't do as well as I could have or should have. And actually, one of the schools that I wanted to go to was Waterloo, because they have I did computer science, and the tech program is known there. I didn't get in because my marks weren't good enough. But I did end up going to UT Scarborough. And in my first year, I was so smart that I could take any course. There was basically a second term course or a second year course that you can take in first term, right? If you basically thought you were so smart that you could do it. So of course, I decided to opt for that one, right? And I did horribly. I think I just passed that one, and basically all my other courses I also just barely passed to, and I got a letter in the mail which was on probation, and that was the huge wake-up call for me, right? And then a lot of it was to figure, okay, wait, a lot of people are studying, yet and are probably doing okay, yet I don't. And I'm not doing so. So maybe there's something to this studying thing. So I overcame this kind of natural genius part and saying, you know what, maybe I should try for this, right? And lo and behold, when you start studying and practice and stuff, you actually start learning things a little bit more. So I kind of align more with that. But then through different parts, because by then I didn't know I was kind of imposter syndrome. I only found out the term maybe, I don't know, a couple of years ago. But it's kind of like, oh, that explains a lot once you get into it. And this, the natural genius part for me also goes to for folks that are aware of what's a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. So Dr. Carol Dweck, who first kind of popularized that term. But yeah, I was definitely fixed up until there. Like, yeah, I'm smart, and basically for a while, maybe similar to you, like I thought that I couldn't learn, right? I was trying and just, well, I should know this, but obviously when you do it by just kind of pure thought and not like kind of learning, research, or reading or whatever, there's only so far you can go. But yeah, I think we all kind of evolved there, and it came back and hit me again in a different time. But I'd love if you kind of would walk us through if you have any other colorful stories, again, to try to help normalize it for folks where, like, yeah, definitely you talked about yourself as a perfectionist. How about one of the other subtypes? Are there any other stories that you're willing to share, as vulnerable or as embarrassing as they may be, about some of the other ones?
Yeah, so I can definitely relate with, I would almost say it's kind of an ego then when you're just like, I'm all that. Like, I got into Waterloo, so, I can take on anything. And, there are people I would compare myself to who looked like they weren't doing any work, like, quote unquote gifted people, and even people in engineering who it seemed like, they didn't have to put any effort in and they still got good grades. So like, I almost equated like being smart as not putting in the work. And so there were certain things that, I had to put less work into. So I was like, I'm smart in this. But I almost thought it was an insult to myself if I put in too much work, which doesn't make sense when you say it out loud. But that's kind of the genius mindset. And you kind of equate your genius to how much work you put into something. But when I think about, successful people, they needed the genius and the hard work. Like it's not just one of them. And of course, if you have a natural talent or ability, then putting in the hard work will multiply that even more. But you need both to be really successful.
Yeah. And my story on one of the other ones, so I talked about natural genius. For me, on the way perfectionist kind of reared its head was that like I was fairly sporty, right? I was pretty good from athletic point of view. Like I wasn't really on so many teams, but I like to say that, you know what, I was pretty good at sports. So I played volleyball, right? But I would purposely play with the suckier people whenever there's an optional thing, so that I could kind of dominate on the court, right? So there
Yeah.
was a group of us that went to the beach, and there were the good folks, the kind of okay folks, and then the other folks, right? I would try to be on the court with the other folks that were just kind of learning, just to kind of show my dominance. And then lo and behold, when the good people are on, no, I'm just gonna sit and relax and just take it easy here, right? And it was kind of one of those self-sabotaging kind of things where later on, when I figured out, you know what, if I play with the good people, I will probably get better, right? And I'll probably improve. And I realized that a little bit later. But before, it was just like, no, to your point about ego, it was definitely, I did not want to be kind of shown up by any of these people who are actually better than me, right? So, and that definitely spurred on the imposter syndrome in other parts of my life too, as well, right? So I guess a question for you is like, how did you overcome it, or have you overcome it? Is I guess another
Yeah.
question.
I would say, like I mentioned before, it feels kind of like a chronic issue. Like it's gonna, at certain points in your life, when you're feeling a little uncertain, it's gonna flare up a little bit. And I think it's more so taking like strategies to help cope with it. And so for me, as Luki mentioned before, the fixed versus growth mindset has really helped me. And thinking about every opportunity as a learning experience, and being okay with not being good at something, and thinking about, everybody who you look up to had to start somewhere. And regardless of where that position was, they had to start somewhere, and they had to make mistakes to get to where they are now. And so I think anything worth doing has that friction to it, where you're going to have to make messy mistakes to succeed in that venture. And so I think that really is something I've internalized through the entrepreneur journey. It's a whole lot of uncertainty, a lot more than school. And that's really something I've been relying on.
Yeah, I think for me, I would echo that. So being kind of older in my life and having experienced more, I take it less personally when someone kind of judges me and then says, "Oh, you're not that smart, you're not that good." So, and because I've kind of been through more of that. But when you're young, you want to maintain, yeah, that Superman, Superwoman persona, that you're the best and the greatest at the goat, the greatest of all time type of thing, right? But like growing up, you realize, really, you know nothing. Right? As much as I learn, I realize, oh my gosh, there's so much more. And I've actually found that imposter syndrome kind of sits for those that never really failed earlier in their life, right? Because they kind of keep going and progressing, and there's only so far you can go without ever failing. Right. So that's kind of one set. But the other set is that it's just a perspective of failure, right? A quote that I found that I love is I never lose, I either win or I learn, right? So if you actually take those failures as it's not failures, it's just something I have yet to learn, well, it changes things completely, right? So how much more? Because I love learning, I love growing and figuring stuff out, and it sounds like that you did as a kid too. So if you took that perspective not as a failure, not as not knowing, it's just like, well, how should I know it? Because I've never done it before. Like, why would I be able to do it? I actually try to drill into my kids. It's not hard. It's just new, right?
Yeah.
It's just stuff that you've never done before. But if you've done it like 5, 10, 100 times before, it actually is pretty easy. But sometimes you just need the right perspective, the right information, the right experience, and then there's an unlock in there, right? And yeah, I would echo that. It does come back. So as much as I've been working on myself and working on it, it rears its ugly head fairly consistently. It's like, oh, and what I encourage folks to do is just acknowledge it. It's like, oh, hey, you,
Back
you're here
again.
back again. It's like, hey, what do you want this time? Okay, what do we do to get over it? And then try to move on, because ignoring it or rejecting it or resisting it is not necessarily a good thing to do. Accepting it that it's a part of you, but also learning from it and figuring out what is it trying to tell you. Because this imposter syndrome is trying to tell you something, right? But what? And do you have to believe him or her or whatever personality you decide to give it? And you're right, absolutely. People need to start somewhere. So I think that's some great and useful guidance, and hopefully that helps to start normalizing imposter syndrome, where like a lot of people feel it, right? And if more people acknowledge it, yeah, today I feel like an imposter, right? I think that would be a great step in everyone's kind of well-being and stuff like that. And then figure out, okay, cool, and what do we want to do about it today? And maybe having some cues, maybe teaching that in university, teaching that in high school, that hey, you might feel this, and if you do, this is what you do. Yeah. Any other comments or some words of wisdom that you might want to share, or things that you've come across that have helped you kind of navigate the world of imposter syndrome along the way?
Yeah, I first want to touch on your point with um, talking about it's hard because you've never done it before. I was in a class today talking about how to start up conversations and do lead generation, and it's a lot of stepping outside of the comfort zone. And she was saying, like, it's not a problem with you, you're just new. It's like a baby learning to walk. Like,
Mhm.
you can't expect to run, so you need to take that learning process at the pace that it is. And it's not a judgment on who you are or how good or not, or if you're supposed to be an entrepreneur or not. It's just a learning process. And then second piece of advice is something that really helped me throughout university dealing with it, was just talking to other people about it. Because once you realize that other people also feel the same way, it's I guess liberating in a way. It's not, oh, it's not something wrong with me. It's something that a lot of my friends and peers share. So that's what I would recommend.
Yeah, I think that's great words of wisdom, and yeah, I think we had a good discussion, and hopefully folks are able to, who are imposters, can recover from that and kind of realize, you know what, you don't have to be, all right? Everyone starts somewhere, everyone grows, everyone learns, and it's up to you to kind of take that perspective and become the best version of you. So yeah, thanks, Marisa, for joining us for another conversation, and hopefully we'll have you back for another interesting topic, and we'll look forward to that discussion.
Thank you, Luki.
All right.
Thanks for joining us on the SIWIKE Stuff I Wish I Knew Earlier, the podcast. If you like the podcast, please subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you found this podcast. And if you can give us a review, that would be very appreciated. Feel free to contact me on LinkedIn at Luki Danu, LUKIDANU, and the same on most social media platforms. And I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks. Bye.